Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 10 of Exploring Intersections. This is a dedicated live stream space for unpacking intersections as we co-create a future work that works for everyone. And my name is Meenakshi Iyer, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, and I'm the founder and principal of North Star Solutions and Services, which is a future work-oriented boutique coaching, training, and consulting practice. We are a virtual practice and we have the privilege of serving our clients globally. And today I have the privilege of having the fantastic Elaine Gold, co-founder of Global Entrepreneurship Network, UK, and a global coach and consultant. And I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you here today. Elaine, thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Elaine is joining us from London, so it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday. So this forum that we have, it's exploring intersections. I personally find intersections to be very insightful spaces with the opportunity for us to have diverse perspectives on issues and challenges, especially in this ever-evolving future of work in that context. So for the past several weeks, we've been exploring different intersections, ranging from the head and heart of leadership to the intersection of power and gender, power and culture and gender. So in this along the same lines, today we're going to explore the intersection of gender and entrepreneurship. And when I thought about this topic, Elaine, you were the first person that popped into my head. So Elaine has had an interdisciplinary and international career spanning many decades and comes with a load of experience and wealth of wisdom that Elaine has always so generously shared, especially as she champions the cause of women as entrepreneurs. And how I met Elaine is a couple of years ago through a program called the Female Foundry, which was it was a partnership. I know there were several collaborating agencies, Denso International, Gen, and I was one of the fortunate ones. I think it was a cohort of 30 of us from North America that participated in that, and that's how I met Elaine, and I've been following your work ever since, Elaine, and it's ever inspiring. And I know you've been in Riyadh just last week, so I'd love for you to share a little bit more about yourself, and your work, and how you got started in this space, championing women entrepreneurship.
Well, thank you for such a wonderful introduction. And I mean, I always find language and the choice of words really interesting. And I find this word intersections, it's got so many layers to it. And I'm sure that's what you've been exploring in previous podcasts that you've been holding. And I've been thinking about it. The word's been mulling around in my head ever since you asked me if I would participate in this particular interview. And I think intersections we always think of as a kind of sort of road networks, one intersection, one road crossing another, or one road coming up to another. And as I was sort of thinking about that, and thinking about this particular intersection as a woman and as an entrepreneur, it feels less like a joining of two roads to almost having to cross a border from one space into another. And I think that's not too an extreme metaphor to think about it, because I think as a woman moving into the space of entrepreneurship, there are a lot of barriers which we need to overcome. There are a lot of visas that we need to have to give us access. So we can keep on elaborating on the metaphor, but I think it's a very real difference to. It's not a smooth pathway from one into another. And maybe I'm sure we will unpack that a bit further, but I mean, all of the research, all of the statistics are there. As you mentioned, I work a lot globally with women entrepreneurs in a number of different continents. And the issue remains the same. It's tougher for women, particularly women entrepreneurs, to find funding for their businesses. Women entrepreneurs who, of course, have to deal with a number of other issues that men don't perhaps have the same burdens to carry or responsibilities to carry as women do. So it is an interesting intersection, and there's a very real difference, I think, between crossing that boundary between entrepreneurship as a woman to it is as a man.
And that was actually going to be one of my first questions for you. Like, what has been your experience, and what does this intersection mean to you?
For me personally, it starts, I think, pre-entrepreneurship. And I think for me, like many women, as if we've moved forward, maybe in corporate career, into leadership positions, then the similar sort of barriers hit us to those as we move into the entrepreneurship space. Men, particularly if you're a young female entrepreneur or you're a young female leader, it's still sometimes very difficult to get your voice heard. It's difficult to be taken seriously, to be seen as being more than the person in the room who might be taking the minutes of a meeting, or just there to take on that kind of sort of softer, more HR capacity role, and then doing the business and presenting yourself as a professional. And I'm going back sort of 30 years now. I mean, I remember distinctly heading up a team, a cultural change project in a financial institution, and hearing the head of that institution turn around and say to the other men in the room that, he agreed with a lot of what I was saying. And for a woman, I talked a lot of sense as well. So, you get those kind, I can see by the expression on your face. I mean, whether that comment could be made now as it was sort of 30 years ago, I hope it wouldn't. But when I've shared that story before with other, young women, they kind of say, yeah, I've had that experience too, still now, which for me is part of the frustration in working in this space, because although there has been a lot of progress, you still find those kind of innate prejudices emerging. And when I talk to female entrepreneurs, and particularly, as I mentioned, the issue of female founders finding funding.
Oh, that's an alliteration.
To try and say that. That's the issue they get. I mean, there was a bit of research from the British Business Bank a couple of years ago that said for every £1 of venture capital investment, less than 1 pence goes to all female-led teams. I mean, that is crazy. And yet we know that there's more return on capital and that female founders exit their business faster. So, the statistics are there to say, come on, the results show that a female entrepreneur, a female-led business will give you greater growth for your investment than male-led businesses.
Absolutely. And, I was doing some research as well in preparation for our conversation. And from the US side, and I'm actually looking up my notes here. So there was the Women's Entrepreneurship Report. According to that, women own 6.2% of established businesses worldwide. And the total global income of women is expected to grow from $13 trillion to $18 trillion in the next 5 years. And exactly like you said, that, business growth and returns are proven to be higher in female-led businesses. However, only 2% of the venture capital goes to women-led startups.
I mean, crazy statistics. And, I was reminded. You mentioned I was in Riyadh last week. I was attending the Global Entrepreneurship Congress, and I was reminded there on a panel discussion looking at investment for female entrepreneurs that women are now the largest percentage of population. We're now 52% of the population are women. So people would talk about, it's foolish to disregard half the population. We're more than half the population. And again, similarly, research has shown that women entrepreneurs tend to hire more staff than men as well in employees. So the win-win for the economy all round is just a virtuous circle, because the money that a female entrepreneur makes in her business goes into growing more employees, but also goes into the family. It goes into, in poorer parts of the world now, the female entrepreneur, the female founder of the business will encourage education for their children and put the money towards that much more than the men will do so. So, and yet we still have these targets in terms of gender equality that we're not reaching as far as the SDGs go.
Yes. And, a couple of things that you talked about, even from your experience from that particular instance that you talked about in being in that room, I still see that as women ended up doing, what I refer to as office chores. So it's like all the chore type of work end up taking notes, getting the in-person, when we were still in person, setting up the rooms and all of that stuff, all of the administrative work is disproportionately falls on women's shoulders at work as well. So, given all the challenges that you just shared, the next question that I have for you is, what makes this intersection important to you personally, and what's your message to aspiring and current female entrepreneurs?
Yeah, it's important to me. I mean, basically, it's like most things when we talk about things that are important to us. They're important to us on two different levels. On an intellectual level, you can say, well, we've just shared some of the statistics that are there. So intellectually, that for the whole world economy, it makes sense to have more investment in female-led businesses. And I think for more investors to train more women to become female investors in female businesses as well. We want more VC organizations that are made up of more women than previously. So it's important to me at an intellectual level. It's important to me at an emotional level as well, because when I think back to that experience of just being in a management position, not running my own business, which I did at a later stage, but emotionally, you remember that. You remember the put down, don't you? You remember that feeling of at a deep emotional level, saying, what is different about me? Where can I not as a woman contribute and have people hear those comments? And I'm sure, again, at an emotional level, we've all been in meetings where we may have said something that hasn't really been taken up or heard. And a guy sitting next to us will repeat the very words that we've said and have everybody sort of take notice. So those emotional memories reside. And I'm now a grandmother of a 4-year-old girl. So again, it's important to me that as she grows up, she has much more equality and equality of opportunity in whatever pathway she might choose to take. So I mean, it's important for us as a worldwide economy, and it's important for us as an individual level too.
I remember you sharing about the personal side of things as well in one of the earlier conversations, and even at Female Foundry. So I'm so glad you talked about that, because it's not just about what we are experiencing currently, it's also about what kind of world are we leaving behind
Exactly.
for the next generation. Can you talk to us a little bit more about your experience in different geographies? I know you work
Yeah.
almost all over the
Yeah.
world. So
Yeah.
what are some of like the top maybe two similarities that you've seen in the challenges that women face?
Well, I mean, I've talked quite a bit about one, which is the access to funding, and that seems to be common wherever. When just coming back from Saudi Arabia, as you know, I lived and worked in the Middle East for 8 years, and that was an issue there. It's an issue here in the UK. I know it's an issue in the US and in Asia too. That in terms of access to funding, that's a commonality there. What's been interesting for me in working and living in some of those different regions is the cultural differences, and for many cultures, it's been a very difficult thing for a woman to take on a position of authority, to take on senior roles. Of course, that is changing, but to become an entrepreneur and to start your own business has been something that many women in different cultures have had to really fight for, in terms of how their family view a woman taking on that position, which is not seen as the more traditional space for a woman to inhabit. And some of the most successful women entrepreneurs that I've known across different regions have had the privilege of having a very supportive father in the family who's really sort of supported them. So I think the role of the men in this whole debate is extremely important as well. Things have moved on a lot legally, but there has still been some legal barriers that a number of women in different cultures have had to face. At one stage, and in some countries, a woman couldn't even have her own bank account. So all of that, thankfully, is moving in the right direction. But there's commonalities there in terms of being funding, and also being how a female founder still has to juggle a lot of other responsibilities that maybe the man doesn't.
The piece that you talked about, like in some cultures, having a strong father or a strong male individual is helpful. I wanted to dig into that a little bit more. So that really speaks to the power of allyship that's required to create success for women.
Yeah.
Do you see, what's your experience with that across the different cultures that you've been in?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we talk about a lot, and even remotely you're able to do, and you're very good at doing that, and LinkedIn provides an opportunity for that, is networking. And it's through your networking that you create those alliances. I think the growth of online communities and networks has made it easier for women to actually reach out and establish those connections. Previously, before we had those different avenues of scope to explore, where it was just the men getting together at their club, playing golf together, creating their own sort of micro networks in that way. Of course, that still happens, but we have a much broader canvas in which we can paint our own space and create our own opportunities with. But alliances are important. So networking is important. And as you and I have talked about in previous occasions, the importance of mentoring is extremely important for women.
And I know that programs like the Female Foundry do such phenomenal work in that space. And at this point, I would really love for you to share a little bit more about the work that you do through Global Entrepreneurship Network, through Jen. And I know Jen has a big presence here in the US as well. So I'm sure that those of us that are watching it live and those that will catch the recording later will find that information useful.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I've been involved with the Global Entrepreneurship Network for about 12 years now. And it actually started as a joint initiative with the United States and with the UK, kicking off about 12, 13 years ago, to launch something that was known as Global Entrepreneurship Week, which still continues now. So for 1 week every November, there was a celebration of entrepreneurship in a number of countries. And it grew from the very early days of about 13 countries to 50 countries. And now we're like over 200 countries. But as we grew, those of us who were involved in leading events like Global Entrepreneurship Week recognized that more needed to be done to support entrepreneurship in our countries. So Global Entrepreneurship Network now covers research, it covers entrepreneurship education, it explores areas like emerging technologies like space technology and astropreneurs. And also we have a Global Business Angels Network now. So there are a lot more activities that Jen gets involved in. And for every country, there'll be a different emphasis. But all of us in our countries will be supporting incubators and accelerators. We have a very strong value and mission towards inclusivity in entrepreneurship. And, again, in each country, there'll be a different particular emphasis into what does that mean for us as a country. But because of the work that I've done with women leaders as well as female entrepreneurs, as Gen UK, we have a particularly strong focus on women entrepreneurs. And we're doing a lot of work with the Commonwealth entrepreneurship sector as well. So there's a lot of activity and support going into we will be launching an accelerator for Commonwealth women entrepreneurs later this year. And that's also endorsed by the UN's Women's Entrepreneurship Accelerator that was launched last year as well. So there's a lot to do.
Yes.
And I think it can be confusing for entrepreneurs, as it seems to be a crowded space. Where do you go for advice? Where do you go to navigate your way through what's on offer? And whatever country you're in, you've probably got a Global Entrepreneurship Network office somewhere in your country as well. But I'm always happy to, if people want to contact me, to help to direct them in there. But people can find out more on the genglobal.org website to find out and read a bit about everything that was happening last week, where interestingly, Saudi's got the fastest growth rate in the world for female founders. So, some very interesting things happening, particularly in Saudi Arabia at the moment for entrepreneurship.
And that it was in the papers here. I remember reading about it in the Washington Post here. And, I think something like 33% of all entrepreneurs are female in Saudi Arabia.
And
that's, And, I just had one more question on the Gen work that you do. Is what's like, if you had to call out one change that you've seen in the last 12, 13 years that you've been associated with Gen, that stands out for you?
I think the whole area of inclusive entrepreneurship has really been something that stood out for me, particularly in the past couple of years. And by inclusive entrepreneurship, I'm not just talking about diversity. I'm talking about real inclusive entrepreneurship, which embraces individuals. In the UK, we have something called protected characteristics. So it might be people with particular well-being needs, people who move from across the spectrum in terms of autism or
Neurodivergence. Yeah.
neurodivergent thinking, across that spectrum, to also thinking about inclusive entrepreneurship in terms of opportunity. So we're talking about returning citizens coming out of jails and seeing entrepreneurship as a way forward to reestablishing a new future for themselves, as well as every country has to deal with these areas that of urban deprivation, where you talk about leveling up. So I think the whole area of inclusive entrepreneurship has really been something that's become something much more prominent in the entrepreneurship space over the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm. And I know that, and this is another phenomenal individual that I follow on LinkedIn, Marcus Bullock, who is he's a returning citizen who's an entrepreneur. He's set up this, it's called Instagram for the incarcerated. That's the tagline for the product. It's Flipkart, Flip Shop, and they actually allow families of those incarcerated connect with them by sending them postcards.
That's great.
Yeah, so it's like an app, and we can. So he's done phenomenal work in bringing technology to this really underserved population.
Yeah. I mean, I've given virtual talks to returning citizens as well on a particular program that we were involved in. And it's really satisfying to see people who are really seeing entrepreneurship as a future focus for them, to really help them rebuild their lives as they return.
So I do have a question here. Do you see the intersectionality aspect play out, like returning citizens and those who are women facing, what's their experience compared to other genders of returning citizens?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. In some, I mean, thinking about the groups that I know of, I think they seem to have quite different choices in terms of the focus of their business, female entrepreneurs as returning citizens, and ones that may be a bit more sympathetic for their position. The guys tend to want to launch themselves into something very big and very grand, which might cause more of a difficulty for them, and they need a lot more support. The female returning citizens who are setting their businesses are tending to be very, very practical and looking at things that they can sort of see that they can achieve perhaps more easily than some of the business ideas that I hear coming from some of the male returning citizens. And I think that goes to speak to where we came in terms of, when you hear female, well, when you're sitting there judging, or you're part of an investment panel, you really notice the different ways in which men and women pitch their business ideas. And the men are the ones who come in with these very grand and usually overconfident estimations of what they're going to achieve in the timescale. The women are much more measured and honestly more realistic in what they can achieve. And I think as a returning citizen in that space, that probably is an advantage for a freelancer to work with.
Yeah.
It's an advantage anyway, but it seems to be more so there.
Yeah. And something you talked about just now, it made me connect back to the funding challenge that we just talked about earlier, right? So, and I know you've been on the other side reviewing business plans and evaluating them. How can we as women get out of our own way when we're approaching funding?
Yes, I mean, and this speaks to to something that I think is common in many aspects, not just when you're pitching for funding, but it's the whole sort of lean forward agenda. It's grabbing the agency that you have and being quite clear in putting and confident in presenting your case, and not being shy to flag up your achievements, not being shy to actually sort of be proud and place on the table all of the achievements that you've had over time there. And that's something that's sadly still a message that needs to be coming forward to females, whether they're female founders or if they're working in corporate life. It's a question of regaining that space and being confident in putting your ideas forward, going forward. Yeah, I find, going back to my comment about now being a grandmother, and I mean, something that drives me crazy is still seeing old-fashioned stereotypes being played out, whether that's in cartoons that the little ones look at or books or whatever. You're still finding perpetuating the female stereotypes of the sort of stereotypical family in terms of race, in terms of gender, and in terms of aspiration. Mummy does the cooking and whatever, and daddy does mending the bikes. And I'm still seeing that, coming through in some of the children's programming. And I think that's, if we really address that issue of gender stereotypes in the media, I think that would be the thing that would really make a difference to bringing about equality for men and women in space. I think it's atrocious that those stereotypes still exist.
And you called out such an impactful point there: representation in media.
Yes.
And because access to social media, the average age is going down possibly every day. And I think that each of us paying attention to what's being put out there and what is the exposure to that. I think that's such a great call out there, and so much to do in that space. And it's such a collective responsibility.
There is, and there's very few countries that actually have guidelines for that in terms of the advertising and marketing media about that. There's one or two countries I know of that do, but I think sadly we do need to have those guidelines for representation in the media, because, as I say, we all know how powerful it is. That we really need to make sure that we're actually challenging those stereotypes in every avenue.
Staying on that, would you please share maybe like one or two tips that women entrepreneurs can think through, either be it that they're looking to strengthen their business, or be it that they're looking to establish their business?
Yeah, I mean, we've touched on a couple of those. I think networking is a key one. Really form your network, grow your network, develop your network, and think as well. I mean, networking is all about building relationships. And we're really good at that as females. We're really good at caring for other people, for really listening to others. And that's what networking is about. It's about building a relationship. It's not about, trying to sell your business or sell your ideas. It's, how can I support you? What is it that you need that I may be able to help you with? And how can I connect you to somebody who can support you? So I think networking is the thing. I mean, and we talked about the online networks now. So there's lots of potential for women to engage. And even if you're participating in an online workshop, start to use the chat role, start to make contacts on the chat role, connect with people. That's really very important. And I think the second area, again, we mentioned previously, is find yourself a mentor. Find yourself someone who can actually give you that objective advice there as a sounding board. You don't want somebody who's going to tell you what to do. You can find particular specialist coaches or business advisors who could do that, but somebody who is there as your mentor, even if that's for a period of a couple of months, to see you through, to support you through a different area, whatever stage your business is at, to think that through. And I guess a last one was, don't be afraid, don't be nervous about it. I mean, jump in. If you've got an idea for a business, if you've got something that's passionately nagging away at your heart or your head, then test it out. Try it out. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. And, I definitely want to attest to the value of mentorship, especially in the entrepreneurship context. And that was my absolutely phenomenal experience at Female Foundry. I was just about at the end of my first year of launching North Star Solutions and Services when I joined that. When I was my application was accepted. So I was accepted into the program. And it really helped me pivot exactly to your point. First of all, I think that during that multi-week program is where I really pivoted to owning what I had become. Because until then, I'd always worked full time. And this was the first time I was trying to do something on my own. And I went about it very, in a very, methodical way. I did my research. I figured out what's the best way for me to set up my business and all of that. But it was not until I participated in the program where I had to do my pitch. Remember that 30-second or 90-second? When I did the practice piece is where I realized that I wasn't viewing myself as a business owner.
Yeah.
And that was coming through. I wasn't viewing myself as a woman in technology, although that's the space I'd been in for most of my career. And that was the value I got out of that program, out of the mentoring relationship. And I still continue to be in touch even after 2 years with my mentor. And anybody that's watching right now or will watch the recording, that's, please feel free to reach out to either of us to, learn more about that. But that's definitely the value of that. And I really love what you said, objective feedback. Someone who's not afraid of holding a mirror,
exactly,
and letting you know what they think about your ideas or your next steps. So absolutely,
most definitely.
One of the other things I think as females, I've definitely struggled with it is pricing strategy, and that's where, especially for service-oriented businesses like mine. And that was another big value that I got out of the Female Foundry program and also the mentorship relationship, to be able to, get that validated, get real world inputs.
Exactly. And that's an interesting one, I think, the pricing strategy, because we do tend to undervalue, particularly for services. And I remember somebody saying to me once, many years ago, when you're putting in a price, whether it's a day rate or whatever, it's not for that one day. You're bringing along, 15, 10, 20 years experience. So that person is not paying for you for one day. They're paying for the value that you bring, and for that accumulation of years of experience that you bring with the delivery.
That's such a powerful reframing. Thank you. Thank you so much. And we have, I'm seeing a few comments here. Harriet, thank you for joining us. Sajid Sajid has been a powerful ally for me and Northstar. He's based in Canada. Thank you for joining
Oh,
us, Sajid.
great. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, as we begin to wrap up this conversation, Elaine, I just had one more question for you, and that's around we've talked about this intersection. We've talked about the different challenges that women face, the opportunities that exist. So I wanted to sort of piggyback off of some of the opportunities that we've talked about and get your views on how might one embrace this intersection to really create value and impact in whatever ecosystems we may be in.
Yeah, I think that takes me back to where we began about really unpacking what we mean by this word intersection. What is it? What are we talking about there? And it is. There are difficulties, as say, it is a bit like crossing the border, and you need all the right paperwork in order to break through and get across the border. But it's a real growth opportunity as well. So I would say, yeah, really do embrace it. I mean, if you're thinking that this is something that you see yourself moving into, that you're building your business, you've got an idea for your business, then just, I said before, go for it. Yes, definitely go for it, but also go for it in a way that enables you to really open yourself up to more learning about yourself. You're not going to do it on your own. We talked about network, but it's not just a network. Have a team with you. You're going to learn so much about yourself. And because we talked about it on the program, you have this growth trajectory from being a founder to being a leader in your business. And and that's quite an interesting metamorphosis in a sense. So if you're going into it, embrace it as a learning opportunity. Don't be scared about it. Find your support network, and really you can achieve so much. And the world is really wanting more of the female entrepreneurs who bring a whole different dimension to entrepreneurship there.
That was so inspiring, Elaine. Thank you so much. And before we end our conversation, any parting thoughts that you would like to share with our audience?
I think really it's around celebrate it, have fun with it, enjoy the journey of being an entrepreneur, and really, as I've said just now, just expand, take it as a learning opportunity, expand your horizons about what you can achieve, and I'm sure we're going to see a lot more successes as we move forward. In fact, this year already, 10 of the first 100 unicorns have had at least one female founder.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. That was something that I was going to ask you about. It totally slipped my mind. Yeah.
Yeah. So the year has started off well, It's started off well. We've got some female unicorns out there already this year. So that's an amazing success.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great. Thank you so much, Elaine, for
My
sharing
pleasure.
your Saturday afternoon with us. And what's the best way people can connect with you? LinkedIn or what other channels?
Well, I guess LinkedIn, people will see me on LinkedIn. Shouldn't be difficult to find there. But yeah, please do connect with me there.
Absolutely. Great. Well, thank you, everyone that was watching us live. I know I'll check back on the comments on Facebook and YouTube. I see a comment just pop up here. Oh, there's a question. How do women networks help women have a seat at the top?
Yeah, I mean, women's networks can help women to achieve a number of more, getting them to have the seat at the top. I think it's partly around it's again going back to the emotional and the intellectual level. Emotionally, women's networks are great at supporting one another, giving each other the confidence, giving each other the sort of the emphasis to keep going, giving that encouragement. But also through the women's network, the connections are invaluable. And you know, as a mentor, that what you're wanting to give to the person that you're mentoring is not just the objective view or your years of experience, but you bring your network as well. So women's networks emotionally will be supportive, but also practically they will extend the opportunities that are available for you and the connections that your business will find really valuable.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Elaine.
No, my pleasure.
Yeah, and with that, we'll wrap up today's conversation here on Exploring Intersections. Yes, thank you, Elaine, and thank you, everyone. And we'll see you back at the next episode of Exploring Intersections. Till then, take
Thank
care.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. Yeah. Look,
absolutely.
thanks a lot. Bye for now.
Bye. Take care, everyone.